Hey everyone, Walsh here from Thin Line Defense, and today we're going to be continuing our low power variable optic series by bringing you a review of the Primary Arms PLx 1x8 with the ACSS Raptor M2 reticle. This thing is absolutely crazy and I can't wait to show it to you. It's really on another planet. As always though, I want to thank Primary Arms for providing us with all the optics we need for this low power variable optic series, and to Wheeler Tools for giving us all the tools we need to install these things the right way so they don't fall off. So previously in our low power variable optic series, we reviewed the Primary Arms 1x6 in the second focal plane and first focal plane. Just as a small refresher for you, in first focal plane, that's the one where the reticle actually changes size as you move the magnification. So this means that the first focal plane reticle works through the entire magnification range, whereas the second focal plane reticle only really works if it's in 1x, and then you can use it at the 100 yard or wherever your 0 is at, and then at 6x is the only one where the actual reticle bullet drop markings would be accurate. During our second focal plane versus first focal plane, it was really interesting that the entire team actually preferred the second focal plane better in a 1x6. But we did all agree that as the magnification increases, that we'd all want to move into a first focal plane. So let's see if changing to a 1x8 changes our opinion. The 1x8 Raptor came heavily requested by all of you viewers, and I even asked you which version you wanted to see, if it was the SLX or the PLX, and all of you said you wanted to see the PLX version. In order to understand more about what PLX is, it's important to understand there's actually 3 different tiers for all Primary Arms optics. The first is the SLX line, or the silver line. Now this is actually what we reviewed when we did the 1x6 second focal plane and first focal plane. This was in their silver line. Now this is in their budget tier, which is more entry level. I really think this is perfect for 90% of all consumers. And then there's the GLX line, which is their gold line. Now this is a little more expensive, but then they come with some really cool features. And then you bump up to what we have today, which is the PLX line, which is the platinum line. Now this is not budget in any way, shape, or form, and it is not entry level. This thing is absolutely crazy, and it's on a totally different level. So I tell you what, let's unbox it. Let me show you how cool this reticle is. Then we'll set it all up, take it to the range, and I'm going to show you some of the awesome stuff I can do with this thing. It is crazy. So here we have our PLX 1x8. Look at this Platinum Series box. Even the box is ridiculous. I can't wait to get this thing out though. Let's take a look at it. If I can just get the lid off. So wow, look at here. Look at this whole presentation. Just the box itself looks ridiculous. Wow. So here we go. Platinum Series. They're not playing around here. Alright, let's get this optic out of here though. Alright, so there's something hidden over here on the side. We'll take a look at what comes in there in just a second. Let's pull this optic out of here. Nothing else in there. Take off this rubber band, and then the rest of this plastic can come off. Wow, this thing is hefty. Wow, that 34mm tube, that's pretty big, but look at how nice this thing looks. It just looks amazing. I love all the detail it has. And look, it has this quick release cap, so it's a little bit different than the SLX line, but it does look really nice. And then the front has the same caps we had before. Flip up and flip down, and they stay in place, so I really like those. I've always been a fan of that. And the magnification turns pretty cleanly. I don't think it's too stiff or too loose. It's pretty easy to move around. I definitely like it. Could use a throw lever though. I'm going to need to get one of those. And as you can see, the turrets here move by 1 mil. They actually have locking turrets, and you could turn it counterclockwise to move the point of impact up, and then clockwise to move the point of impact down. And the clicks are nice and audible, and you just unlock the turret like we said, and you can change it to the right or to the left, and then lock the turret back down. Then we have the diopter also, and as you can see here, the diopter is also nice and smooth. It has a good bit of resistance, so it's not just going to spin randomly. And then we have the light illumination. As you can see, there are actually off stops in between each one, and a night vision setting, an N1 and an N2, in case you're running any sort of night vision and need some illumination. But I like having the stops in between, so now I don't have to go all the way around just to turn it back off again. Alright, so let's see what came in this little pouch then here. Alright, so it looks like this is comes with an extra 2032 battery. So I forgot to take a look inside here. Ah, yeah, okay. So there's just a regular 2032. You can see how to place it in there in case you go to replace it. And now we know we have an extra one. And then the tool that came in there also is so that you can actually set the 0 stops on this. So we'll get the tool out of the bag and we'll take a look at it. So here, So here we can see you just loosen the actual caps, and then you can lift those caps off so that you can reset them and push them back on and lock them down, so it would be at a 0 position when you locked it back down. And then you can just tighten it, and then it would be at a 0 position in case you need a reference as to where you were at if you were making a bunch of adjustments or something. And then you could do that for the elevation on top of the windage. So let's see what's in the instructions then. We go through this. All right, well, we talked about a whole bunch of this stuff. We went through most of the features of the optic itself, but if you want to see some instructions here on what they are, this is what it is. Then we have how to achieve a clear reticle picture. Make sure to do this to set the diopter so you see the reticle clearly. There are some different elevations and zeros you need to set, so pay attention to this when you set the optic in order to make sure the ACSS markings are accurate for you. Then it goes over some of the reticle illumination. So this talks about how we can set the turrets to 0 like we just mentioned a second ago with the tool. And this shows us how each adjustment adjusts for 0.36 inches at 100 yards, so 0.1 mils per each click. And then shows you how you can use the reticle for close quarter shooting. We'll talk more about the bullet drop compensation and the wind holds when we go over the actual reticle. How to do target leading, there's markings for that. Horizontal ranging, we'll go through that when we talk about the reticle in detail. And then also the ranging ladders, which show you how to range a vertical target. So this is pretty cool. All right, so we'll go through all that in a second. And here's the actual specifications if you want to know all the details of the actual optic, if you need to measure anything. And it looks like that's about it. All right, let's do this thing. Okay, so be careful here. This optic and some of the others in the GLX and PLX line actually come in 34mm tubes. So most people have a 30mm rings as the standard. So just be careful when you're purchasing these to make sure you're getting the appropriate rings for them. The 34mm gives you a few advantages with the bigger tube. It gives you a little bit better eye relief, and it actually allows more light to come in so you can see more clearly. But it comes at a cost. This thing is a chunk. Look at the scale here, and you can see it weighs 27 ounces, and that's without the mount. With the 34mm mount, we're at almost 35 grams for the optic. That's seriously hefty if you're used to a red dot. All right, let's mount it up. Most of you have seen this a few times, so I'm gonna blaze through it. All right, let's get the mount out, and then we'll get the actual tool we need. Now remember though, you can't actually torque this down properly. There's no torque measurement in this tool. And what's interesting is there's very specific torque specifications for the hex nuts and for the cross bolts. So if you want to do this properly, make sure you use a torque wrench. I use the Wheeler fat wrench. It's awesome. So we'll set that up for when we install it. So for now, we need to remove our previous first focal plane optic by first focal plane. And then we're going to install this mount, finger tight, and then we'll go ahead and take off the top caps. We'll just quickly remove these, and then remove each of those top caps so we can put the optic in place. Make sure it moves freely. Put those top caps back on, and then we just want to reinstall those screws finger tight. Then we can set our eye relief. We'll just make sure that we have some free range of movement, moving it forward and backwards. Set that eye relief, good to go, and then we can torque it down. Use the proper torque values. Then you can use a level just to make sure it's straight before you tighten everything down. Use the proper torque value on our Wheeler fat wrench, and then we are ready to go and shoot it. All right, now that we got everything mounted up, let's take a look at the reticle and put it through its paces. Now I did say in my first focal plane versus second focal plane video that I did prefer the second focal plane reticle due to the way it works and having the horizontal and vertical ranging, plus also with the illumination. I will chime in here and say that the 1x8 ACSS Raptor M2 is my new favorite reticle. Let me show you why. So the first focal plane and second focal plane reticles are pretty cool when you zoomed in. The first focal plane lets you see pretty clearly, and the second focal plane had both the horizontal and vertical ranging. But then when you'd zoom out, the first focal plane was too small and nothing actually worked on the second focal plane. That's where we use the Raptor M2 reticle. Here we also have the vertical ranging, and you can see where all the indicators are for your range marking, so you can easily mark your target. Or you could still use horizontal ranging to mark your targets indicated on the bullet drop indicator. Now what if you had wind? As with the other reticles, you can easily adapt for this, such as a 7.5 mile an hour wind you would put between the 5 and 10 mile per hour hash. Now in our close quarter engagement, the 1x reticle is so small, but the Raptor M2 is a much larger reticle, so that makes target acquisition very fast like a red dot. It also has an illuminated center, so lighting up against a black shirt or black background is easy. The reticle also allows for a moving target, so you can follow that target if they are moving from right to left with the reticle. So enough talking about the reticle, let's see if it translates into actual performance. So due to the ammo shortage, there's not much ammo, so I'm having to get creative in my training. So I made a little course in the backyard that I'm actually going to train with this optic on, and let's see if it translates into realistic performance on actual live fire. So some of the first things I have to tell you immediately is how much I love the 1x illumination. Now I'm a red dot guy, so my brain likes to chase the dot. So the reticle on the 1x is super bright and easy to see. And not only that, but at 1x it causes a horseshoe-like design with the dot in the center, so it's very easy to see and very easy to transition between targets. I found that I could see it easily and I could rapidly transition from one target to the next. I am absolutely loving it. And then when you zoom in, you get an even larger reticle that has all the BDC markings, and you can see even clearer with the amazing glass that it has. So my thought process is I'm going to spend 99% of my time training on these targets, and then we'll go out to the live fire range, and I'll just use live fire in order to validate my training to see if my training out here on these simple targets actually translates into realistic live fire results. So I'm going to go put the training in, but let's go out to the range and go zero this thing. So I got a pretty easy way to zero. What I do is I just bore sight first. Then you're going to want to go and align the reticle with the bore sight. And then once you have that, you can go and make your first shot. And then once you have the indication of where your first shot landed, then you lock the actual rifle down. Make sure you get it firm in position. And then once it's locked down, you change the elevation and windage so that your impact then moves to the actual bullet location. So here I'll lower the elevation and turn so the actual reticle is now sitting on the impact position. This will then set us so we are now zeroed at one shot. And here I go and take a shot at the metal gong just to make sure we have everything where we need it to. And we're good to go. So I will say that some of you probably have your own crazy ways of zeroing, but with having so many optics that we review and have to zero with limited ammo, I find this to be an extremely efficient way to zero all of our rifles and optics together. I do have a horribly bad habit of turning the dial the wrong way, so if I need to go one click to the right, I turn one click to the left, and then I look at it and be like, wow, I need to go take a shot, and then I need to go one more to the right, and then I turn the dial more the wrong way. So I really like this method because it just alleviates my own error from it. So now that we're all zeroed, let's go see if that coursework we did in the yard actually translates into that live fire performance. Let's start with some up downs. So again, the targets are easy to see. There's really no difference. We're still kind of doing dry fire here. All right, let's run the course with live fire and see how we do. So I have to say the optic just transforms me as a shooter. I am incredibly fast. Now we did a lot of training with it, and it kind of goes to show you that you could practice with a whole lot of dry fire and then just validate that training with very little live ammo. I found that reticle to be so useful where it would just horseshoe around exactly what I wanted to shoot at, and then I could transition to targets so quickly. This reticle is awesome, but we're only seeing one part of it. I'm only really using it at 1x. So tell you what, let's stretch this thing out, go to 6x or anywhere in between. Let's just go straight out 300 yards. Let's go right now. So shot after shot after shot, I was able to just ring the gong on the 300 yard, just like I was shooting at the one. I would even say it was easier to shoot at the 300 than to even shoot at the 100 because I'm zoomed in so far and the glass is so clear and it's just so easy to see. It's completely simple. I think it's scary easy. So tell you what, let's go over my pros, cons, and whether or not I recommend this optic. So let's start with pros. My absolute biggest pro on this optic is the reticle. I just love it. So at the 1X, it performs a lot like a red dot. It's actually extremely similar to my Holosun 503G, which is my favorite red dot. I think that's one of the best ones. But what's really cool is it has the same design at a 1X. So my training just kicks in and I can just use the same training that I've used with that red dot. And I just absolutely love it. And it's easy for me to see. Because it's a little bit larger, you have much better illumination than we had with the 1x6 first focal plane. And then you can even zoom in at any magnification range. So with 1:6, yeah, there's a pretty big difference between 1:6, but it's not absolutely crazy. At 1:8, I can see pretty clearly with this HD glass out to 1,000 with zero problem. I would love to see if I could even make that shot, but being able to see it and recognize that target is very easy. The glass is absolutely amazing. But we haven't even started talking about the reticle as you zoom in. As you move in further into 8X, you not only have your normal horizontal ranging, but then you can clearly see the vertical ranging. So it'd be easy for you to range any target. I really, really love this reticle. I think this reticle is what makes this so great, even compared to the 1x6 first focal plane and second focal plane. I think this is one of the coolest optics I've ever seen. So with every pro, there comes a con, and this one has a few. The first one's going to be the cost. Now, some of you who use Night Force optics may be like, oh, that's nothing. The cost isn't anything. But for me, as just like an everyday tactical shooter, this is quite expensive. But I do see where some people come from, where it would be easy for me to get an expensive optic, and then I can just transfer it from rifle to rifle. As I upgrade or change my rifles, I would always have a good optic, and I never really need to change that out. So I do see that mindset. Now, another negative is the weight. This thing is pretty hefty at almost 37 ounces, but the thing I found the most interesting is it never actually affected my performance. I never felt that I was slower because the optic weighed too much. Because it's so far back, I'm not really having to fling it around. It's just kind of staying there on the top of the rail. So while it's a negative, I didn't really find it to affect me at all. So the last con I want to talk about is Parallax. Now, this isn't necessarily a con, but more of a public service announcement. Now, I want you to be aware that this does not have a parallax adjustment, nor do most 1x8s or 1x10s. So why that's a problem, place your thumb out in front of you like you're going to aim with it, right? But then move your head, and you're going to start to see that that reticle, your thumb you were using, actually moves. So why is that super important? Because without a parallax adjustment, you need to make sure that your cheek weld is perfect, and not necessarily perfect, but consistent. So if you don't have a consistent cheek weld, you're going to be extremely frustrated when you go to zero this rifle, because it's not the rifle or the optic that's going to be off. It's going to be your head placement that's going to throw that shot off, and it will frustrate you incredibly. So if you're going to use this optic, you need to train and you need to have the skill sets to actually use your rifle consistently throughout every shot you're going to fire with this optic, because otherwise you're going to throw these shots off. So, do I recommend this optic? Holy hell do I. Now, I have to say, this is the first optic I've ever reviewed at this level, so I don't have a whole lot to compare it against to say, like, what super high tier, is it better or worse than? I have no idea. I will say that that price tag would absolutely sting, but I would want to have this optic, and I would probably have it as one of the few optics that I even own, because then I would never need to upgrade and I could always just put it on a new rifle later. So I hope you had fun with me learning about this absolutely ridiculous optic. Big thanks to Primary Arms for letting me play with something this cool, and to Wheeler Tools for all the gear we needed to install it. We're actually going to take a small pause from our LPVO series to review a couple red dots, to include the Vortex UH1, also known as the Huey, and we're actually going to look at some really good budget options in the SIG Romeo 5. Then we'll actually revisit LPVOs by comparing what our team thinks about LPVOs versus red dots. I think that's going to be really cool, and some of you are going to get really angry. So we'll see how that goes. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. Watch out. We would all want to move into